I never told my son about my $40,000 a month salary, even though he always saw me living a simple life. One day he invited me to have dinner with his wife's parents who were visiting from Asia. I decided to see how they would treat a poor person pretending to be a broke and naive mother. But as soon as I walked through the door of that restaurant, everything changed. What happened that night shattered my daughter-in-law and her family in a way they never imagined. And believe me, they deserved it. Let me explain how I got there. Let me tell you who I really am. Because my son Daniel, at 35 years old, never knew the truth about his mother. To him, I was always that woman who left early for the office, who came back tired at night, who cooked with whatever was in the fridge. Just another employee, a secretary maybe, someone in the crowd, nothing special. And I never corrected him. I never told him I earned $40,000 every month. That I had been a director at a multinational corporation for almost 20 years. That I signed multi-million-dollar contracts. That I made decisions affecting thousands of people. Why would I tell him money was never something I needed to hang on the wall like a trophy? I grew up in a time when dignity was carried on the inside, where silence was worth more than empty words. So I kept my truth. I lived in the same simple apartment for years. I used the same leather purse until it fell apart. I bought clothes at regular stores. I cooked at home. I saved everything. I invested everything. And I got rich in silence, because real power doesn't scream. Real power observes. And I observed carefully when Daniel called me that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, like when he was a little boy who'd done something wrong. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor. Sarah's parents are visiting, from Asia. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. There's a dinner on Saturday at a restaurant. Please, come." Something in his tone made me uncomfortable. It wasn't the voice of a son inviting his mother. It was the voice of someone asking me not to embarrass him, to fit in, to make a good impression. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly. There was a silence. Then Daniel stammered. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." There it was, the word, simple. As if my entire life could fit into that one miserable adjective, as if I were a problem he needed to apologize for. I took a deep breath, a very deep breath. "It's okay, Daniel. I'll be there." I hung up. I stood there looking at my living room, old but comfortable furniture, walls without expensive paintings, a small TV, nothing to impress anyone, and in that moment I decided. If my son believed I was a poor woman if his wife's parents were coming ready to judge, then I would give them exactly what they expected to see. I would pretend to be broke, naive, desperate, a mother who was barely surviving. I wanted to feel firsthand how they treat someone who has nothing. I wanted to see their true faces, because I suspected something. I suspected that Sarah and her family were the kind of people who measure others by their wallets, and my instinct is never wrong. Saturday arrived. I dressed in the ugliest thing I owned, a light gray, shapeless, wrinkled dress, the kind they sell at flea markets, old worn-out shoes, no jewelry, not even a watch. I took a faded cloth purse. I pulled my hair back into a messy ponytail. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman destroyed by life, forgettable, perfect. But before I continue, subscribe to the Elderly Stories channel and hit the notification bell, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. I promise. I got into a taxi. I gave the address, a restaurant in the most expensive part of the city, the kind where the menu has no prices, where each table costs more than a normal person's monthly salary. As we drove, I felt something strange, a mix of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because I knew something big was coming. Sadness because a part of me still hoped I was wrong. I hoped they would treat me well, that they would be kind, that they would see beyond the old clothes. But the other part, the one that worked for 40 years among corporate sharks, that part knew exactly what was waiting for me. The taxi stopped in front of the restaurant. Warm lights, a doorman in white gloves, elegant people walking in. I paid. I got out. I took a deep breath. I walked through the door, and there they were. Daniel was standing next to a long table near the windows. He wore a dark suit, white shirt, shiny shoes. He looked nervous. Next to him was Sarah, my daughter-in-law. She wore a beige dress with gold details, high heels, her hair perfectly straight, falling over her shoulders. She looked impeccable, as always. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking towards the entrance with a tense, almost embarrassed expression. And then I saw them, Sarah's parents, already seated at the table waiting like kings on their thrones. The mother, Linda, wore a tight, sparkling emerald green dress, jewelry on her neck, on her wrists, on her fingers. Her black hair was pulled up in an elegant bun. She had that kind of cold, calculated beauty that intimidates. Next to her was David, her husband, an impeccable gray suit, a giant watch on his wrist, a serious expression. They both looked like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. I walked towards them, slowly, with short steps, as if I were afraid. Daniel saw me first, and his face changed. His eyes widened. He looked me up and down. I saw him swallow hard. "Mom, you said you were coming." His voice sounded uncomfortable. "Of course, son. Here I am." I smiled shyly. A smile from a woman who isn't used to places like this. Sarah greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek, cold, mechanical. "Mother-in-law, so good to see you." Her eyes said the exact opposite. She introduced me to her parents in a strange tone, almost apologizing. "Dad. Mom, this is Emily." Daniel's mom. Linda looked up. She looked at me, and in that instant, I saw it all. The judgment, the contempt, the disappointment. Her eyes scanned my wrinkled dress, my old shoes, my cloth purse. She didn't say anything at first. She just extended her hand. Cold, quick, limp. "A pleasure." David did the same. A weak handshake, a fake smile. Charmed. I sat in the chair at the end of the table, the one furthest from them, as if I were a second-class guest. No one helped me with my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. The waiter arrived with the menus, elegant, heavy, in French. I opened one and pretended not to understand anything. Linda was watching me. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, please. I don't know what these words mean." My voice came out small, timid. She sighed. She ordered for me. "Something simple," she said. "Something that doesn't cost too much. We don't want to overdo it." The sentence hung in the air. David nodded. Daniel looked away. Sarah fidgeted with her napkin. No one said anything, and I just watched. Linda started talking, first about general things, about the trip from Asia, how tiring the flight was, how different everything was here. Then she started talking about money, subtly at first. She mentioned the hotel they were staying at, $500 a night. She mentioned the car they had rented, a luxury one, obviously. She mentioned the stores they had visited. We bought a few things. Nothing too crazy, just a few $1,000s. She spoke while looking at me, as if waiting for a reaction, as if waiting for me to be impressed. I just nodded. "How nice," I'd say. "How lovely," she continued. "You know, Emily, we've always been very careful with money. We work hard. We invest well. Now we have properties in 3 countries. David has important businesses. And, well, I dedicate myself to overseeing our investments." She smiled, a superior smile. "And you, Emily, what do you do exactly?" Her tone was sweet but venomous. "I work in an office," I replied, looking down. "I do a bit of everything. Paperwork, filing, simple things." Linda exchanged a look with David. "Ah, I see. Administrative work. That's good. It's honest. All jobs are dignified." "Right. Of course," I replied. The food arrived, huge plates with tiny portions, everything decorated like art. Linda cut her steak with precision. "This costs $80, she said. "But it's worth it. You pay for quality." "You can't just eat anything, right, Emily?" I nodded. "Of course. You're right." Daniel tried to change the subject. He talked about his work, about some projects. Linda interrupted him. "Son, does your mother live alone?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, she has a small apartment. Linda looked at me with fake pity. It must be hard, right? Living alone at your age, without much support, and your salary is enough for everything. I felt the trap closing. Barely, I answered. But I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much. Linda sighed dramatically. Oh, Emily, you're so brave, truly. I admire women who fight on their own. Although, of course, one always wants to give our children more. Give them a better life. But, well, everyone gives what they can. There it was, the blow. Soft, but deadly. She was telling me that I hadn't been enough for my son, that I hadn't given him what he deserved, that I was a poor mother, insufficient. Sarah stared at her plate. Daniel was clenching his fists under the table, and I just smiled. Yes, you're right. Everyone gives what they can. Linda continued. We always made sure Sarah had the best. She studied at the best schools. She traveled the world. She learned 4 languages. Now she has an excellent job. She earns very well. And when she married Daniel, well, we helped them a lot. We gave them money for the down payment on the house. We paid for their honeymoon, because that's who we are. We believe in supporting our children. She looked at me intently. And you, Emily, were you able to help Daniel with anything when they got married? The question hung like a sharp knife. Not much, I answered. I gave them what I could, a small gift. Linda smiled. How lovely, every little bit counts, right? The amount doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts. And right there in that moment, I felt the rage begin to awaken inside me. The rage wasn't explosive. It was cold, controlled. Like a river under ice. I breathed slowly. I kept my timid smile. I let Linda keep talking. Because that's what people like her do. They talk. They inflate themselves. They show off. And the more they talk, the more they reveal themselves. The more they expose themselves, the more they show the emptiness they carry inside. Linda picked up her wine glass. Red, expensive. She swirled it in her hand as if she were an expert. This wine is from an exclusive region in France. It costs $200 a bottle, but when you know about quality, you don't skimp. Do you drink wine, Emily? Only on special occasions, I replied, and usually the cheapest kind. I don't understand much about these things. Linda smiled condescendingly. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a trained palate. That comes with experience, with travel, with education. We visited vineyards in Europe and South America and California. David and I are quite the connoisseurs. David nodded. It's a hobby. Something we enjoy. Sarah is also learning. She has good taste. She inherited it from us. He looked at Sarah with pride. Sarah gave a weak smile. Thanks, Mom. Linda turned back to me. And you? Emily, do you have any hobbies? Anything you enjoy doing in your free time? I shrugged. I watch TV. I cook. I walk in the park. Simple things. Linda and David exchanged another look. A look loaded with meaning, with silent judgment. How lovely, said Linda. Simplicity has its charm, too, although of course one always aspires for more right to see the world, to experience new things, to grow culturally. But while I understand that not everyone has those opportunities, I nodded. You're right, not all of us have those opportunities. The waiter arrived with dessert, small portions of something that looked like edible art. Linda ordered the most expensive one, $30, for a piece of cake the size of a cookie. This is delicious, she said after the first bite. It has edible gold on it. See these little golden flakes? It's a detail that only the best restaurants offer. I took my dessert. Simpler, cheaper. I ate it in silence. Linda continued. You know, Emily, I think it's important we talk about something. As a family. Now that we're all here. She looked up. Her expression changed. It became serious, motherly, fake. Daniel is our son-in-law, and we love him very much. Sarah loves him. And we respect that decision. But as parents, we always want what's best for our daughter. Daniel tensed up. Mom, I don't think this is the time. Linda raised her hand. Let me finish. Son, this is important. She looked at me. Emily, I understand you've done the best you could with Daniel. I know raising him alone wasn't easy, and I respect you for that. I really do. But now Daniel is in a different stage of his life. He's married. He has responsibilities. And will Sarah and he deserve to have stability? Stability? I asked in a soft voice. Yes, Linda replied. Financial stability, emotional. We've helped a lot. And we'll continue to help, but we also think it's important that Daniel doesn't have any unnecessary burdens. Her meaning was clear. She was calling me a burden, me, her son-in-law's mother, the mother of her daughter's husband. Sarah stared at her plate as if she wanted to disappear. Daniel's jaw was tight. Burdens, I repeated. Linda sighed. I don't want to sound harsh, Emily, but at your age living alone with a limited salary, it's natural for Daniel to worry about you, for him to feel he has to take care of you. And that's fine. He's a good son, but we don't want that worry to affect his marriage. Do you understand me? Perfectly, I replied. Linda smiled. Good. I'm glad you understand. That's why we wanted to talk to you. David and I have thought of something. She paused dramatically. We could help you, financially, give you a small monthly allowance. Something that would let you live more peacefully, without Daniel having to worry so much. Obviously, it would be something modest. We can't work miracles, but it would be a support. I remained silent, watching her, waiting. She continued. And in return, we would only ask that you respect Daniel and Sarah's space, that you don't seek them out so much, that you don't pressure them, that you give them the freedom to build their life together without interference. What do you think? There it was, the offer, the bribe disguised as charity. They wanted to buy me. They wanted to pay me to disappear from my son's life, so I wouldn't be a nuisance, so I wouldn't embarrass their precious daughter with my poverty. Daniel exploded. Mom, this is enough. You don't have to. Linda interrupted him. Daniel, calm down. We're talking like adults. Your mother understands. Right, Emily. I took my napkin. I calmly wiped my lips. I drank a sip of water. I let the silence grow. Everyone was looking at me. Linda with expectation, David with arrogance, Sarah with shame, Daniel with desperation. And then I spoke. My voice came out different. It was no longer timid. It was no longer small. It was firm, clear, cold. That's an interesting offer, Linda, truly. Very generous of you. Linda smiled victoriously. I'm glad you see it that way. I nodded. But I have a few questions, just so I understand correctly. Linda blinked. Of course. Ask whatever you want. I leaned forward slightly. What would you consider a modest monthly allowance? $500, $1,000? Linda hesitated. Well, we were thinking around $500. Maybe $700. It depends. I nodded. I see. $700 a month for me to disappear from my son's life. Linda frowned. I wouldn't put it like that. But yes, I replied, that's exactly how you put it. She shifted in her chair. Emily, I don't want you to misunderstand. We just want to help. Of course, I said. Help. Like you helped with the down payment on the house. How much was that, $30,000? Linda nodded with pride. $40,000, actually. Ah, $40,000. How generous. And the honeymoon? $15,000, Linda said. It was a 3-week trip through Europe. Incredible, I replied. So you've invested about $55,000 in Daniel and Sarah. Linda smiled. Well, when you love your children, you don't skimp. I nodded slowly. You're right. When you love your children, you don't skimp. But tell me something, Linda, did all that investment, all that money buy you anything? Linda blinked, confused. What? Did it buy you respect? I continued. Did it buy you real love, or did it just buy obedience? The atmosphere changed. Linda stopped smiling. Excuse me. My tone grew sharper. You've been talking about money all night, about how much things cost. How much you spent, how much you have, but you haven't asked me once how I am, if I'm happy. If anything hurts, If I need company, you've only calculated how much I'm worth. And apparently, I'm worth $700 a month. Linda turned pale. I did not. Yes, I interrupted. You did. From the moment I arrived, you've been measuring my value with your wallet. And you know what I discovered, Linda. I discovered that the people who only talk about money are the ones who least understand its true value. David intervened. I think you're misinterpreting my wife's intentions. Oh, really? I looked directly at him. And what are her intentions? To treat me with pity, to humiliate me throughout dinner, to offer me a handout so I'll disappear. David opened his mouth but said nothing. Daniel was pale. Mom, please. I looked at him. No, Daniel, please, no. I'm done being quiet. I placed my napkin on the table. I leaned back in my chair. There was no more shyness in my posture, no more shrinking. I looked Linda directly in the eyes. She held my gaze for a second, then looked away. Uncomfortable. Something had changed and she felt it. They all felt it. Linda, you said something very interesting a moment ago. You said you admire women who fight alone. That they are brave? Linda nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Then let me ask you something. Have you ever fought alone? Have you ever worked without your husband backing you up? Have you ever built something with your own two hands without your family's money? Linda stammered. I have my own achievements. Like what? I asked with genuine curiosity. Tell me. Linda fixed her hair. I manage our investments. I oversee properties. I make important decisions in our businesses. I nodded. Businesses your husband built. Properties you bought together. Investments made with the money he generated. Or am I wrong? David intervened, annoyed. That's not fair. My wife works just as hard as I do. Of course, I replied calmly. I don't doubt that she works. But there's a difference between managing money that already exists and creating it from scratch, between overseeing an empire you inherited and building it brick by brick. Don't you think? Linda pursed her lips. I don't know where you're going with this, Emily. Let me explain, I replied. 40 years ago, I was 23 years old. I was a secretary in a small company. I earned minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find. And I was alone, completely alone. Daniel was staring at me. I had never told him this in such detail. I continued. One day I got pregnant. The father disappeared. My family turned their back on me. I had to decide whether to keep going or give up. I chose to keep going. I worked until the last day of my pregnancy. I went back to work 2 weeks after Daniel was born. A neighbor watched him during the day. I worked 12 hours a day. I paused. I drank some water. No one spoke. But I didn't stay a secretary. I studied at night. I took courses. I learned English at the public library. I learned accounting, finance, management. I became an expert in things no one taught me, all on my own. All while raising a child alone. All while paying rent, food, medicine, clothes. Linda was staring at her plate. Her arrogance was starting to crumble. And you know what happened, Linda? I got promoted. Little by little, from secretary to assistant, from assistant to coordinator, from coordinator to manager, from manager to director. It took me 20 years. 20 years of nonstop work, of sacrifices you can't even imagine. But I did it. And do you know how much I earn now? I asked. Linda shook her head. $40,000 a month. The silence was absolute, as if someone had pressed a pause button on the universe. Daniel dropped his fork. Sarah's eyes went wide. David frowned in disbelief, and Linda froze with her mouth slightly open. $40,000, I repeated. Every month. For almost 20 years, that's nearly $10 million in gross income over my career, not counting investments, not counting bonuses, not counting company stock. Linda blinked several times. No, I don't understand. You earn $40,000 a month. That's right, I replied calmly. I'm the regional director of operations for a multinational corporation. I oversee 5 countries. I manage budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that affect more than 10,000 employees. I sign contracts that you couldn't read without lawyers, and I do it every single day. Daniel was pale. Mom, why did you never tell me? I looked at him tenderly. Because you didn't need to know, son. Because I wanted you to grow up valuing hard work, not money. Because I wanted you to become your own person, not an heir. Because money corrupts, and I wasn't going to let it corrupt you. But then, Sarah whispered, why do you live in that small apartment? Why do you wear simple clothes? Why don't you have a luxury car? I smiled. Because I don't need to impress anyone. Because true wealth isn't for show. Because I learned that the more you have, the less you need to prove it. I looked at Linda. That's why I came dressed like this tonight. That's why I pretended to be poor. That's why I acted like a broke and naive woman. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors. And boy, did I see them, Linda. I saw them perfectly. Linda was red, with shame, with anger, with humiliation. This is ridiculous. If you earned that much money, we would know. Daniel would know. Why would he believe you're poor? Because I let him, I answered. Because I never talked about my work. Because I live simply. Because the money I earn, I invest. I save it. I multiply it. I don't spend it on flashy jewelry or showing off in expensive restaurants. David cleared his throat. Even so, that doesn't change the fact that you were rude, that you misinterpreted our intentions. Really? I looked at him intently. Did I misinterpret when you said I was a burden to Daniel? Did I misinterpret when you offered to pay me $700 to disappear from his life? Did I misinterpret every condescending comment about my clothes, my job, my life? David didn't answer. Neither did Linda. I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Let me tell you something that clearly no one has ever told you. Money doesn't buy class. It doesn't buy a real education. It doesn't buy empathy. You have money. Maybe a lot of it, but you don't have a single ounce of what really matters. Linda stood up too, furious. And you do? You who lied? Who deceived us? Who made us look like fools? I didn't make you look like fools, I replied coldly. You managed that all by yourselves. I just gave you the opportunity to show who you really are, and you did. Magnificently. Sarah had tears in her eyes. Mother-in-law, I didn't know. I know, I interrupted. You didn't know. But your parents knew what they were doing. They knew they were humiliating me, and they enjoyed it. Until they found out that the poor woman they looked down on has more money than them, and now they don't know what to do with that information. Linda was trembling. You have no right. I have every right, I answered, because I am your son-in-law's mother, because I deserve respect, not for my money. Not for my job, but for being a human being, something you forgot during this entire dinner. Daniel stood up. Mom, please, let's go. I looked at him. Not yet, son. I'm not finished yet. I looked at Linda one last time. You offered to help me with $700 a month. Let me make you a counteroffer. I'll give you $1 million right now if you can prove to me that you have ever in your lives treated someone well who didn't have money. Linda opened her mouth. She closed it. She said nothing. Exactly, I replied. You can't. Because for you, people are only worth what they have in the bank, and that's the difference between you and me. I built wealth. You just spend it. I earned respect. You buy it. I have dignity. You have bank accounts. I picked up my old cloth purse. I took out a credit card. Black, platinum. I dropped it on the table in front of Linda. This is my corporate card. Unlimited limit. Pay for dinner? All of it. With a generous tip, consider it a gift from a broke and naive mother. Linda looked at the card as if it were a venomous snake, black, shiny, with my name engraved in silver letters, Emily Marquez, Regional Director. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked it up. She turned it over. She looked at it. Then she looked at me. Her eyes no longer had that gleam of superiority. Now there was something different, something I never thought I'd see in her. Fear. I don't need your money, she said in a broken voice. I know, I replied, but I didn't need your pity either, and yet you offered it to me all through dinner. So take it as a gesture of courtesy or education, something you clearly didn't learn despite all your trips to Europe. David tapped the table gently. Enough. This has gotten out of control. You are disrespecting us. Respect? I repeated. How interesting that you use that word now. Where was your respect when your wife asked me if my salary was enough to live on? Where was it when she suggested I was a burden to my son? Where was it when she offered to buy me off so I would disappear? Armando clenched his jaw. Linda just wanted to help. No, I corrected. Linda wanted to control. She wanted to make sure the poor mother didn't ruin her daughter's perfect image. She wanted to eliminate the weak link in the chain. The problem is you picked the wrong link. I looked at Sarah. Her head was down. Her hands were on her lap, shaking. Sarah, I said softly. She looked up. Tears were running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that my parents... Don't finish that sentence, I interrupted her. Because you did know. Maybe you didn't know about my money. But you knew what your parents are like. You know them. You know how they treat people they consider inferior. And you did nothing to stop them. Sarah sobbed. I wanted to say something, but they're my parents. I know, I answered. And Daniel is my son, and still I let him make his own decisions. I let him choose his life, his wife, his path, because that's how you love. With freedom. Not with control. Not with money. Not with manipulation. Daniel came closer to me. Mom, forgive me. Please, forgive me for never asking, for assuming, for thinking you were... His voice broke. I hugged him. You don't have to apologize, son. I did what I did for a reason. I wanted you to be independent, to value the right things, not to depend on me financially, to build your own life. But you made me feel like I had to protect you, Daniel said, that I had to worry about you, that you were fragile. I know, I answered, and it wasn't wrong for you to think that. Because that's how you learn to care, to worry about others, to be empathetic. Those are lessons that money can't buy. Daniel hugged me tightly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Linda was still standing, rigid, watching the scene with a mix of confusion and contained rage. This changes nothing, she said finally. You lied. You deceived us. You came here with hidden intentions. You acted in bad faith. That's true. I nodded. I acted. I pretended to be something I'm not, exactly what you do every single day. What is that supposed to mean? David asked. It means you hide behind your money, behind your jewelry, behind your trips, behind everything you can buy. But inside you're empty. You don't have deep conversations. You don't have real interests. You have nothing to offer beyond a bank account. Linda laughed, a dry, bitter laugh, coming from someone who lied all night. That's hypocrisy. Maybe, I replied, but my lie exposed the truth, your truth, and now you can't hide. Now you know that I saw you, that I felt every comment, that I stored every insult disguised as advice. And that I will never forget it. The waiter approached timidly. Excuse me. Would you like anything else? David shook his head sharply. Just the check. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Linda sat down again, defeated. Her posture was no longer elegant. It was the posture of someone who had just lost something important, and it wasn't money, it was power. Emily, she said in a softer, less aggressive voice, I don't want this to ruin the relationship between our families. Daniel and Sarah love each other. They have a life together. We can't let this, I interrupted her. Let this, what ruin your plans, expose what you really think. It's too late for that. Linda, the damage is done. But we can fix it, she insisted. We can start over. We can... No, I cut her off firmly. We can't. Because now I know who you are. And you know who I am, and that truth can't be erased with empty apologies or fake smiles. You treated me like trash, and you did it with pleasure, with joy. Because you thought you could. David cleared his throat. You were the one who came here lying. You provoked this situation. You're right, I nodded. I provoked this because I needed to know, too. I needed to confirm what I already suspected. That you are not good people. That your money doesn't make you better. That you are exactly the kind of people who look down on others for not having the same. Linda wiped away a tear. We're not bad people. Maybe not, I replied, but you are definitely not good, and there's a huge difference between those two things. The waiter returned with the check. He left it in the center of the table. No one touched it. Linda looked at my black card still in her hands. Then she looked at me. I'm not using your card, she said. We will pay our own bill as we always do. Perfect, I replied. Then keep that card as a souvenir, as a reminder that not everything is as it seems, that the woman you look down on all night has more than you will ever have. And I'm not just talking about money. Linda left the card on the table. I don't want it. And I don't want your morality lesson either. I pushed it back towards her. Keep it anyway. Because something tells me you're going to need it. Someday, you're going to meet someone like me. Someone who pretends to be less than they are. And you're going to make the same mistake again, because people like you never learn. David took out his wallet. He took out several credit cards, all gold, all shiny. He chose one and put it on top of the check. The waiter took it and left. No one spoke during those minutes of waiting. The silence was thick, uncomfortable, heavy. Sarah was crying silently. Daniel was holding my hand. Linda was staring at the wall. David was checking his phone to avoid eye contact. The waiter came back. Sir, your card was declined. David looked up sharply. What? It was declined, the waiter repeated. Do you have another form of payment? David turned red. That's impossible. That card has a very high limit. It must be a system error. The waiter shrugged. I can try again if you like. David handed him another card. The waiter left. Linda looked nervously at her husband. What happened? I don't know, David answered, irritated. It must be a bank error. Maybe they froze the account for security. It happens sometimes when you travel. I nodded with feigned understanding. Of course those things happen. How inconvenient. The waiter returned again. I'm sorry, sir. This one was declined too. David stood up. This is ridiculous. I'm going to call the bank right now. He stormed out of the restaurant. Linda remained seated, ashamed, humiliated. This has never happened to us, she murmured. Never. What bad timing, I commented without emotion. Daniel looked at the check. Mom, I can... No, I interrupted him. You're not paying for anything. I took out my wallet, a simple old leather wallet. I took out another card. This one wasn't black. It was transparent, made of metal, heavy. A card that less than 1% of the people in the world have. I placed it on the table in front of Linda. She looked at it. Her eyes widened. She recognized what it was. That's a Centurion card. That's right, I replied. American Express, by invitation only. Minimum annual spending requirement of $250,000. A $5,000 annual fee just to have it. And benefits you can never imagine. Linda said nothing. The waiter took the card carefully, as if it were something sacred. He returned in less than 2 minutes. Thank you, Mrs. Marquez. Everything is all set. Would you like the receipt? That's not necessary, I replied. The waiter nodded and left. Linda was still staring at the space where the card had been. I stood up. I took my old purse, my cloth bag. I looked at Linda one last time. The dinner was delicious. Thanks for the recommendation. And thank you for showing me exactly who you are. You saved me a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of future disappointments. Linda finally looked up. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from contained rage. This isn't over, she said with a trembling voice. "You can't just humiliate us and walk out as if nothing happened. Sarah is our daughter. Daniel is our son-in-law. We are still going to be family. You're going to have to see us," I smiled. "You're right. I am going to have to see you. At birthdays, at Christmas, at family gatherings. But now I'll see you differently. I will no longer wonder what you think of me. I already know, and you will know that I know, and you will live with that. Every time you see me, every time you pretend to be nice, you will remember tonight." David returned to the table. He had his phone in his hand. His face was pale. "There's a problem with the accounts," he said. "A temporary block, for security. It'll be resolved tomorrow." He looked at the table. "Did you pay?" "Yes," Linda answered without looking at him. "She paid." David looked at me. His pride was shattered. "Thank you," he murmured. It was barely audible. "Don't mention it," I replied. "That's what family is for, right? To help each other, especially when someone needs a small monthly allowance. Let's say $700. Or in this case, $1,800, which is what this dinner cost." David closed his eyes. Linda clenched her fists on her lap. Daniel came closer. "Mom, let's go. Please, it's enough." I looked at him. "You're right. It is enough." I turned to Sarah. She was still crying silently. "Sarah," I said softly. She raised her head. "You are not to blame for how your parents are. No one chooses their family. But you do choose how you act, how you treat others, how you raise your own children someday." Sarah nodded through her tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "Don't apologize again," I told her. "Just learn. Learn that money doesn't define people, that humility is not weakness, that respecting others costs nothing, and that if you ever have children, teach them to see people's hearts, not their bank accounts." Sarah sobbed harder. Daniel hugged her. Linda was looking away. David was checking his phone again, avoiding all eye contact. I headed for the exit. I took a few steps, then I stopped. I turned around one last time. "Oh, Linda, one more thing." She looked at me. "Remember when you said you speak 4 languages?" Linda frowned. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Just curious," I replied. "In which of those 4 languages did you learn to be kind? Because clearly it wasn't in any of them." Linda opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Exactly," I said. "You can speak 100 different languages and still not say anything worth listening to." I walked out of the restaurant. Daniel was walking by my side. The cool night air hit my face. I took a deep breath. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Not a physical weight, an emotional one. The weight of pretending, of tolerating, of being silent. Daniel took my arm. "Mom, are you okay?" "Perfectly fine," I answered. "Better than ever. And you?" Daniel sighed. "I don't know. I'm processing everything. I can't believe you never told me about your job, about your money, about everything you achieved." I stopped. I looked him in the eyes. "Does it bother you?" He shook his head quickly. "No, of course not. I'm proud, incredibly proud, but I also feel foolish. Blind." "You're not foolish," I said. "You simply saw what I wanted you to see, and I did it on purpose, because I needed you to grow up without depending on me, without feeling like you had a financial safety net waiting for you. I needed you to fight, to work, to value everything you got for yourself." Daniel nodded. "I understand. But now I also understand why you never complained, why you never asked for help, why you always seemed so calm, because you didn't need anything." I smiled. "I needed many things, son. Just none of them could be bought with money. I needed to see you grow up, to see you become a good man, to see you make the right decisions, and you did, in your own way." "Even marrying Sarah?" he asked in a weak voice. "Even marrying Sarah," I replied. "She is not her parents. She can learn. She can change. But that's up to her. And you. on how you build your relationship, on what values you choose to follow. Daniel fell silent, processing, thinking. A taxi stopped in front of us. I had called for it as we were leaving. I opened the door. Daniel stopped me. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you do it? Why did you come pretending to be poor? Why not just tell them the truth from the beginning?" I closed the taxi door. I turned to him because I needed to know, son. I needed to confirm if my suspicions were true, if Sarah's family was really as I imagined, and unfortunately, I was right. Daniel looked down. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize for them," I said, "but you do have to decide what kind of husband you want to be. What kind of father you want to be someday." "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean, you just saw two very different ways of handling money and power, your in-laws' way and mine. They use it to control, to humiliate, to feel superior. I use it to have freedom, to help without showing off. To live peacefully, you decide which path to follow." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand." I opened the taxi door again. I got in. I rolled down the window. Daniel came closer. "Mom, one last question. Tell me, are you ever going to forgive Linda and David?" I thought for a moment. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting," I replied, "nor does it mean letting it happen again. I might forgive them someday, when I see real change, when they see people as people, not as numbers, but until then I will simply be polite, distant, and extremely careful." "And me," Daniel asked, "do you forgive me for not asking? For assuming? For allowing this scene to happen?" I looked at him tenderly. "Son, there's nothing to forgive. You did what you thought was right. You wanted your families to meet. That's beautiful. What happened next wasn't your fault. It was theirs. And a little bit mine too, because I decided to play their game." Daniel smiled faintly. "You won." "I won," I nodded. "But I don't feel victorious. I feel tired and sad, because I confirmed something I didn't want to confirm. That there are people who will never change, that there are broken families even if they have money, that there are voids that no bank account can fill." The taxi driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, shall we go?" "Yes," I replied. "Give me a second." I looked at Daniel one more time. "Go to Sarah. Talk to her. Listen to her. Support her, but also be honest. Tell her how you felt tonight. Tell her what you expect from her family. And from her, because if you don't set boundaries now, this will happen again. Over and over again." "I will," Daniel promised. "I love you, Mom, and I mean it more now than ever. Because now I know who you really are, and you're amazing." I smiled. "I love you too, son. I always have. I always will. No matter how much money I have or don't have. Because love has no price. And that's a lesson Linda and David will never learn." Daniel stepped away from the taxi. I motioned to the driver. "We can go." The taxi pulled away. I looked out the window. I saw Daniel walking back to the restaurant, his shoulders slumped, thoughtful, probably going back to find Sarah, to face his in-laws, to have difficult conversations. And I felt proud, because that meant he was maturing, that he was learning, that he was choosing to be better than the example he had just witnessed. The taxi moved through the city's illuminated streets. I closed my eyes. I thought about everything that had happened, every word, every look, every tense moment, and I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I had been too harsh, too cruel, too vengeful. But then I remembered every disguised insult, every condescending comment, every look of contempt, and I knew I hadn't, that I hadn't been too anything, that I had simply been honest, finally. The taxi drove through the empty streets of the night. The lights of the buildings passed quickly by the window. I opened my old cloth bag and took out my phone. A simple phone. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. I had 3 unread messages, One from my assistant asking about a Monday meeting, another from a colleague congratulating me on a closed deal, and one from an unknown number. I opened the unknown message. It was from Sarah. "Mother-in-law, please forgive me. I didn't know my parents would be like that. I'm ashamed. I need to talk to you, please." I looked at the message for a long time. I thought about replying. Then I decided not to. Not yet. I needed time. She needed it too. Words rushed by guilt rarely mean anything real. True change takes time. Reflection. Consistent action. I put the phone away. The taxi driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Excuse me for asking, ma'am. Is everything all right?" I looked up and met his gaze. "Yes, everything's fine. Why? It's just that you got in very quiet. And usually people who leave that restaurant are happy, talking about how delicious the dinner was. You came out like you'd been in a war." I smiled slightly. "Something like that? Was it that obvious?" He shrugged. "I've been driving a taxi for 20 years. I've seen it all. Drunk people, people fighting, couples breaking up, families arguing, and you have that face of someone who just said something they'd been holding back for years." "You're perceptive," I told him. "It's my job," he replied. "Besides, it helps pass the time. Want to talk about it, you don't have to. But sometimes it helps to tell a stranger, someone who won't judge you, someone who doesn't know you." I considered his offer. It was tempting, but I shook my head. "Thank you, but I think I've talked enough for one day." He nodded. "I understand, but let me tell you something. Whatever happened in there, you did the right thing. I know because you're calm. You're not crying. You're not screaming. You're processing. And that means you spoke your truth. And the truth always brings peace. Even if it hurts." His words surprised me. He was an older man, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and hard-working hands. A simple man, like I was pretending to be. "Do you believe in the truth?" I asked him. "I believe in honesty," he replied. "Not always in the absolute truth, because the truth changes depending on who's telling it. But honesty doesn't. Honesty is saying things as you feel them, without masks, without lies, even if it hurts, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it costs you something." I nodded. "You're right." "My wife always told me I was too direct," he continued, "that I said things without a filter, that I hurt people without meaning to. And maybe she was right, but she also told me she never doubted me. Because she knew that what came out of my mouth was real, not calculated, not manipulated. Just real." I smiled. "She sounds like a good woman." "She was," he replied. "She passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," I said sincerely. He shook his head. "Don't be sorry. We had 40 years together, 40 years of honesty, of fights, of making up, of laughter, of tears. And not a single day did I go to sleep wondering what she was really thinking, because she always said it. And so did I. That's a gift." "You're right," I murmured. "It is a gift." The taxi stopped at a red light. "Can I ask you something personal?" the taxi driver said. "Go ahead." "Are you rich?" The question took me by surprise, not because of the question itself, but because of the direct way he asked it. "Why do you ask?" "Because I picked you up from a $1,000 per person restaurant, but you're dressed like someone who shops at discount stores. You have an old purse, worn-out shoes, but you talk like an executive. You carry yourself like someone with power. And you paid for my taxi with crisp new bills you took out of a wallet that looks 20 years old." "Observant," I commented. "Part of the job," he repeated. "So, are you—" "It depends on how you define rich," I replied. "If you're talking about money, yes, I have enough, more than enough. If you're talking about happiness, then yes, too, I have peace. Health, a son I love, a job I'm passionate about. That makes me rich in many ways." He nodded, satisfied. I knew there was something. Truly rich people don't need to show it off. The light turned green. The taxi moved forward. "So what happened in that restaurant?" he asked. "If it's not too intrusive." "I pretended to be poor," I replied, "to see how they would treat me." He let out a laugh. "Seriously, that's brilliant. And how did they treat you?" "Like trash," I said without emotion. "They humiliated me. They offered me charity. They treated me as if I were invisible. Less than human." He stopped laughing. "I'm sorry." "That must have hurt." "A little," I admitted, "but it also confirmed something for me. That I was right about those people, that they weren't worth my time, that they didn't deserve my respect. And now they know it. Now they know who I am, and they're going to have to live with that shame." The taxi driver whistled softly. "I bet that was epic." "It was," I smiled. "It definitely was." We arrived at my building, an old building, middle class, nothing luxurious. Nothing impressive, but comfortable, safe, home. The taxi driver parked. He looked at the building. "You live here. I live here." I confirmed. He shook his head in amazement. "You really are something special. Most people with money move to expensive areas, to buildings with doormen, with private security, with a gym and a pool. You live like a normal person." "I am a normal person," I replied. "I just have more money than most. But that doesn't make me different. It doesn't make me better. Money is just a tool, not an identity." He smiled. "I wish more people thought like that. The world would be a better place." I took out my wallet. "How much is it?" $30, he answered. I gave him a $100 bill. "Keep the change." "Ma'am, this is too much." "It's not," I said. "You listened to me. You gave me perspective. You reminded me that there are still good people out there. That's worth more than $70. He took the bill carefully. "Thank you." "Really?" "Thank you," I replied. "And hold on to that honesty. It's rare. It's valuable. Don't lose it." "I won't," he promised. I got out of the taxi. I closed the door. He rolled down his window. "Ma'am, one last thing." "Yes." "Whatever happened tonight, don't regret it. Don't be sorry for it, because people like you, people who speak the truth, even when it hurts, they're the ones who change the world, little by little. One conversation at a time." I smiled. "Thank you. I'll remember that." The taxi drove away. I stood in front of my building, looking up, towards my 5th-floor window. The light was off, dark, silent, waiting for me. I went into the building. I walked up the stairs. I never used the elevator. I preferred to walk, to stay active. I reached my door. I took out my keys, the same keys I'd had for 15 years. I opened it. The apartment was cold, empty. I turned on the light. Everything was in its place. The simple living room, the small kitchen, the dining room with mismatched chairs, the walls without expensive paintings, and I felt at peace, because this place was mine, truly mine, not bought to impress, not decorated to show off, simply a space where I could be myself, without masks, without pretensions. I took off my old shoes. I took off the wrinkled gray dress. I put on comfortable clothes, old pajamas, soft, familiar. I made myself some tea. I sat on the couch. I turned on the TV. The news. Nothing interesting. I turned it off. I sat in silence, thinking, processing, feeling. And for the first time in many years, I felt completely free. Free from pretending, free from being silent, free from tolerating, free from being less than I was. Because that night, I didn't just expose Linda and David. I also freed myself from expectations, from judgments, from the need to hide who I was, and that was priceless, more than any number in my bank account. My phone vibrated. Another message, this time from Daniel. "Mom, did you get home okay?" I smiled. I replied quickly, "Yes, son, I got home perfectly fine." "I'm home, resting." His response was immediate. "I love you. Thank you for everything, for being who you are, for teaching me, for never giving up." I closed my eyes. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Not of sadness, of relief, of love, of gratitude. I replied, I love you too, always. I put the phone aside. I drank my tea. I looked around my simple apartment, my sanctuary, my truth, and I smiled. Because at the end of the day, it didn't matter how much money I had. It didn't matter how high I had climbed in my career. The only thing that mattered was this moment, this peace, this honesty with myself. I woke up early on Sunday. As always, 40 years of working had trained me to get up with the sun. Even though it was my day off, my body no longer knew how to sleep in. I made coffee, strong, no sugar. I sat by the window with a hot cup in my hands. I watched the city wake up, the vendors opening their stalls, people walking somewhere. Life went on, as always, indifferent to personal dramas. My phone started to ring. It was a familiar number. Daniel, I answered. Good morning, son. His voice sounded tired. Mom, I need to talk to you. Did something happen? A lot, he replied. Sarah and I talked for hours last night. Her parents were there too. It was intense. I took a sip of coffee. Tell me. Daniel took a deep breath. After you left, I went back to the restaurant. Linda and David were still there, waiting for their cards to work. It was humiliating for them. Sarah was a wreck, crying, and I was furious. More furious than I've been in years. I waited in silence. He continued. I told them everything I felt during that dinner. I told them I was ashamed of them, that they treated my mother like trash, that their behavior was unacceptable, that I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. And what did they say? I asked. At first, Linda tried to defend herself. She said they just wanted to protect Sarah, that they wanted to make sure I had a stable family, that they didn't have bad intentions. David said I was exaggerating, that it had been a normal dinner, that your reaction was disproportionate. I gripped the cup in my hands. Typical. But then Sarah spoke up, Daniel continued. She told her parents they were wrong, that they had been cruel, that she had seen every comment, every look, every disguised insult, and that she was ashamed to be their daughter in that moment. His voice broke. Mom, I had never seen Sarah stand up to her parents like that. I smiled slightly. That's good. It means she's waking up. Linda became hysterical, Daniel said. She started screaming that Sarah was ungrateful, that they had sacrificed everything for her, that they had given her the best life, that she had no right to judge them. David backed her up. He said we were being manipulated by you, that you had planned the whole thing to make them look bad. I let out a dry laugh. Of course. It's my fault. That's what made them even angrier, Daniel said. I told them they were right, that you did plan everything, but that they fell into the trap because that's who they really are, because they really treat people they consider inferior badly. That you just gave them the opportunity to show themselves, and they did it perfectly. Well said, I murmured. Thanks. I learned it from you. There was a silence. Then Daniel continued. Mom, I need you to know something. I made a decision last night. Sarah and I are going to set boundaries with her parents. We're not going to cut them off, but we're going to set clear rules. No comments about money, no comparisons, no trying to control our lives. And if they can't respect that, then they'll have to accept the consequences. And they accepted? I asked. No, he replied. They left furious. They said we were ungrateful, that someday we would regret it, that when we needed help, they wouldn't be there. David said he was going to reconsider his will. Linda said Sarah had chosen the wrong family. I shook my head. Emotional blackmail. The last resort of people with no arguments. Exactly, Daniel said, but it didn't work. Sarah stood her ground. I did too. They left the restaurant without saying goodbye, without looking back. And honestly, Mom, I felt relieved, like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. That's because it was, I told him. You lifted the weight of living under their expectations, under their control. Now you can build your life the way you want to, not as they dictate. Thank you, Mom, Daniel said with an emotional voice. "Thank you for doing what you did last night. I know it was hard. I know it was uncomfortable. But we needed to see it. I needed to see who they really were. And Sarah needed to see that there was another way to live. A more honest, more authentic way. You're welcome, son. I just did what I thought was right." "There's something else," Daniel said. "Sarah wants to come see you. She wants to apologize in person. She wants to talk to you, not as a daughter-in-law trying to make a good impression, but as a woman trying to learn. What do you think?" I thought for a moment. "Tell her she can come. But not today. Give her a few days. Let her process. Let her think carefully about what she wants to say. Rushed apologies are hollow. The ones that take time are real." "I'll tell her," Daniel promised. "Mom, one more question. How are you? After everything, how do you feel?" I looked out the window. The sun was fully up now. The day had officially begun. "I'm fine," I answered. "Better than fine. I'm at peace. Because I finally said everything I needed to say. And I don't regret a thing." "I'm glad to hear that," Daniel said. "I love you." "I love you too. Get some rest. See you soon." I hung up the phone. I finished my coffee. I got up. I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. Go for a walk. With no destination. No rush. Just walk and think. I got dressed in comfortable clothes. Old jeans, a simple blouse, worn-out sneakers. I took my keys. I went out. The streets were full of life. Families strolling, children running, couples holding hands, vendors selling food. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air. I walked through the nearby park. I sat on a bench. I watched the people go by, and I realized something. Most of these people probably didn't have much money. They lived paycheck to paycheck. They worked hard. They struggled every day, but they smiled. They hugged each other. They enjoyed the moment. And then I thought about Linda and David. With all their money, their properties, their trips, their jewelry, were they happy really, or were they just busy trying to prove something, trying to fill a void with material things, trying to buy themselves value, respect, love, things that have never been for sale, that can never be bought? An elderly woman sat down next to me. "Good morning," she said with a smile. "Good morning," I replied. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she commented. "Very beautiful," I agreed. She took some bread out of her bag. She started feeding the pigeons. "I come here every Sunday," she said. "It's my moment of peace, before the week gets crazy again." "I understand that," I said. "I also needed a moment of peace." "Tough week?" she asked. "Something like that," I replied. "More like a tough night." She nodded wisely. "Sometimes a single night can change everything." "You're right," I murmured. She looked at me. "Can I give you some unsolicited advice?" "Go ahead." I smiled. She pointed to the pigeons. "Look at those birds. Some are big. Some are small. Some have pretty feathers. Others have ruffled feathers. But they all eat from the same bread. They all share the same space. None of them thinks it's better than another." "That's a nice metaphor," I said. "It's not a metaphor," she replied. "It's the truth. We humans are the only animals who invent false hierarchies, who measure value with external things. The pigeons don't do that. They just live. They just are. We should learn from them." I smiled broadly. "You're absolutely right. You should give lessons to some people I know." She laughed. "Oh, my dear, at my age I don't give lessons anymore. I just observe. And I share what I see. But most people don't listen. They're too busy running, buying, competing, forgetting that in the end we all end up in the same place. With or without money, with or without jewelry, with or without properties. We all end up as dust." "How philosophical. How realistic," she corrected. "I've lived 82 years. I've seen it all, and I can tell you something. The most miserable people I ever knew were the ones who had the most. Because it was never enough. They always wanted more. They were always competing, always comparing, and they died without ever really living, without ever really loving, without ever really being." Her words resonated deep within me, as if she had touched on something I already knew but hadn't articulated. "Thank you," I told her, "for sharing that." She patted my hand. "You're welcome, my dear, and remember, it doesn't matter how much you have or don't have. What matters is how you treat others, because that stays. That transcends. That's the only inheritance worth leaving." She stood up slowly. She put away her empty bag. She waved goodbye. "Have a beautiful Sunday." "You too," I replied. I watched her walk away, a small woman, hunched over by the years, with old clothes and worn-out shoes, but with more wisdom than all the Lindas and Davids of the world combined, and I felt grateful for that encounter, for that reminder, for that simple and powerful truth. I stayed on the bench a while longer, thinking, feeling, processing everything that had happened, and I came to a conclusion. I didn't regret anything, not a single word, not a single action, because everything I did last night was necessary, it was liberating, it was honest, and honesty, even when it hurts, is always the right path. 3 days passed before Sarah knocked on my door. 3 days of silence, of processing, of reflection. When I heard the doorbell that Wednesday afternoon, I knew who it was. I opened it. There she was, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse. No jewelry, no heels. She looked vulnerable, real, different from the woman I had seen in the restaurant. "Mother-in-law," she said in a low voice. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. "Come in." She entered slowly, looking around, observing my apartment with new eyes, the simple living room, the old furniture, the walls without expensive decorations. She sat on the couch when I gestured. I sat across from her, waiting, not pushing, letting her find her words. "I don't know where to start," she finally said. "Start wherever you feel," I replied. She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize, but not just with words. I came to explain why my parents are the way they are, and why I stayed silent for so long." I listened in silence. Sarah continued with a trembling voice. "My parents grew up poor, in a small village in Asia, without electricity, without running water. Working in the fields since they were children, they saw their own parents die young from lack of medicine, from lack of money. They went hungry, they suffered, and they promised themselves they would never be poor again, that they would do whatever it took to get out of there." I nodded. "I understand. That explains a lot. They worked like animals," Sarah continued. "They saved every penny. They migrated looking for opportunities. David built his business from scratch. Literally from scratch. And when they started making money, they never forgot what it was like to have none. That's why they talk about it so much. That's why they measure everything by that standard, because for them, money means survival. Security, never going back to that dark place. It's understandable," I said. "Trauma does strange things to people." Sarah nodded. "But that doesn't justify how they treated you. I know. And I want you to know that I saw everything. Every comment, every look, every insult. And I stayed silent because I've spent my whole life doing that, keeping quiet, accepting, letting them control everything. Because they taught me that contradicting them was betrayal. It was ingratitude. And now," I asked, "now I understand I was wrong," she replied, "that love is not control, that family is not blind obedience, that I can love them and still disagree with them. Daniel helped me see it. You helped me see it. That night at the restaurant, when you revealed yourself, when you told them everything. It was like a blindfold was removed from my eyes." Sarah wiped her tears. "I always knew something was wrong. I always felt that the way they measured people was incorrect, but I convinced myself it was me, that I was too sensitive, that I didn't understand the world. But you showed me I wasn't, that there's another way to live. A way where money doesn't define your worth, where humility is strength, where authenticity is wealth." I took a sip of water. "Sarah, I didn't come that night to change you. I came to protect myself. to know who I was dealing with. I know, she replied, and I thank you for that, because your brutal honesty saved me. It saved me from becoming my mother, from perpetuating that cycle, from teaching my future children that people are worth what they have. I don't want that. I don't want to be that. And your parents, I asked, how are they after all this? Sarah sighed, furious, hurt, humiliated. Linda hasn't spoken to me in 3 days. David sent me a message saying I had disappointed him, that I had chosen strangers over my own blood, that I would regret it someday. She paused. And you know what's strange? I don't feel bad. I feel free. That's good, I said. It means you made the right decision. Sarah nodded. Daniel and I set boundaries. We told them they can be a part of our lives, but only if they respect us. If they respect our decisions. If they stop trying to control us with money or emotional blackmail. And if they can't do that, then they'll have to accept a distant relationship. How did they take that? I asked. Badly, Sarah replied. Linda said we were ungrateful. That they had sacrificed everything for me. David threatened to disinherit me, to cut off all financial help. As if that were the only thing we cared about. As if our love for them depended on their money. And that's when I realized they really believe that. They really think their value is in their wallet. It's sad, I commented. Very sad, Sarah agreed. Because they have so much, and they enjoy nothing. They just accumulate, compete, show off. But they never stop to ask themselves if they're happy. If they have peace. If they have real connections with people. They just count their properties and feel victorious. While inside they're empty. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at me directly. Mother-in-law, I want to ask you something. Go on. I want to learn from you. I want you to teach me how to live with dignity, how to be rich without needing to show it, how to have peace in the midst of chaos, how to be strong without being cruel, because that night I saw something in you that I never saw in my parents. I saw class. I saw real power. I saw a woman who didn't need to shout to be heard. I smiled tenderly. Sarah, I can't teach you that. That's learned by living, by making mistakes, by falling, by getting up. The only thing I can do is share my experience and tell you that the path is not easy, that you'll face criticism, judgments. People who won't understand why you live differently. But if you stay true to yourself, if you live by your values, you will find peace, and that peace is worth more than any number. I want to try, Sarah said. I want to be better, not just for Daniel. For me, because I deserve to live without that constant pressure, without that need to impress, without that fear of not being enough. Then do it, I told her, but don't do it all at once. Do it little by little. Start by questioning your habits, your purchases, your motivations. Ask yourself before every decision, is this for me or for others? Does this bring me peace or just appearance? Sarah nodded, taking mental notes. And my parents. Do you think they'll ever change? I looked at her honestly. I don't know. Change requires you to recognize a problem. And they don't believe they have one. They believe the world is wrong, that people are ungrateful, that they are victims, until they see that no change is possible. But you can change. You can break the cycle. I will, she promised, with Daniel's help, and I hope with your guidance too. You don't need my guidance, I replied. You just need your inner compass. That voice that tells you what's right and what's wrong, that voice you silenced for years to please your parents. Listen to it. Trust it. Follow it. Sarah wiped away her last tears. Thank you, mother-in-law, for everything, for your patience, for your honesty, for not giving up on us. There's nothing to thank me for, I said. Just promise me one thing. When you have children, teach them the value of people, not the price. Teach them empathy, humility, kindness, things that don't cost money but are worth everything. I promise, Sarah said firmly. I promise with all my heart. We hugged, a real hug, warm, honest, no acting, no masks, just two women connecting as humans. Sarah left an hour later, lighter, freer, with hope in her eyes. I closed the door behind her. I sat down on my couch again. I looked around my simple apartment, and I smiled, because this was enough. This was everything. An honest space, an authentic life, real relationships. I didn't need more. I never needed more. My phone rang. It was a message from Daniel. Mom Sarah told me about her visit. Thank you for having her. For listening to her. For giving her a chance. I love you more than words can express. I replied simply, I love you too, son. Always. I put the phone aside. I made tea. I sat by the window. I watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Real wealth isn't in how much you have. It's in how much you enjoy what you have, in how much peace you feel, in how many genuine people surround you, in how many times you can look in the mirror and be proud of who you are. Linda and David had millions, but I had this tranquility, this authenticity, this pure love from my son, and that made me infinitely richer than them. I never pretended to be poor again. I didn't need to. I had learned what I needed to learn. I had seen what I needed to see, and I had released what I needed to release. Linda and David remained who they were, rich in money, poor in spirit, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I had spoken my truth. I had set my limits. I had protected my peace, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to pretend who I was. I just was. Emily, mother, executive, woman, survivor, fighter, rich in all the ways that truly mattered. And that was more than enough. It was everything.